Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're digging into a pretty fascinating idea from author Mark Pitstick that really challenges our perception of reality. What if everything you see, hear, and touch is just a tiny, tiny fraction of what's actually out there?
So let's just dive right in with a fundamental question. Is what you perceive with your five senses the whole story, or is it maybe just a sliver of the real picture?
The author uses this really powerful metaphor to explain it. Imagine that all the information and all the energy in the entire universe is the size of Mount Everest, okay? Now, in that comparison, everything our five senses can possibly detect is only the size of a single golf ball. And that's the core idea we're going to unpack. That huge, huge gap between what we perceive and what's really there.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to look at why our senses are so limited in the first place. Then, we'll get into what the author calls the great news that lies beyond those limits. We'll also explore how certain life-changing events can kind of crack open our perception. And finally, we'll cover some practical tools for how to live with this bigger perspective.
All right, let's start with the foundation of this whole thing, getting a handle on the biological limits of our own perception.
Now, here's a really fascinating, kind of counterintuitive idea from the source material. We tend to think of our brains as these receivers, just taking everything in. But the author argues that its main job is actually to be a filter. It's designed to intentionally limit what we sense so that we can function without being completely and constantly overwhelmed.
And this slide just perfectly illustrates how narrow our little pinhole view is. I mean, think about it. You feel perfectly still right now, but our planet is hurtling through space at over 66,000 miles per hour. We look up at the night sky, but we can't possibly wrap our heads around the scale of billions of galaxies. Our senses give us a stable, manageable reality, not the full, mind-boggling truth.
So if our perception is that limited, it really begs the question, what exists in that vast reality beyond our senses? And this leads us right to what the author calls the great news, a set of really profound claims about the true nature of life and consciousness.
And this is really the heart of the great news. The author's conclusion is that if our reality is so much bigger than we perceive, then consciousness isn't just confined to our physical bodies. And if that's true, it means life continues after death, that we never truly lose the people and pets we love, that we're all part of a larger whole, and that our lives here actually have a real purpose.
The author uses a very specific term to drive this point home, postmaterial person. Instead of saying deceased or dead, this term really emphasizes that only the physical body, or the earth suit as it's sometimes called, comes to an end. The core individual, their consciousness, their personality, their love, that all continues.
So this brings us to a really key question. How does somebody actually shift from that golf ball view to seeing Mount Everest? Well, according to the source, it's often through something called a spiritually transformative experience.
So what is an STE? Well, it's a powerful event that can just shatter that golf ball view of the world and give you a direct glimpse of Mount Everest. The author describes it as an awakening that fundamentally changes how you see yourself and your place in the whole universe. And what can trigger an STE? Well, it's not always some dramatic near-death experience. According to the author, it can be something deeply personal and profound, like the birth of a child, or it can be something quiet and internal, like a moment of pure awe in nature or a really deep meditation. And this visual really captures the claimed impact. According to the author, people who have these experiences often report this profound shift away from fear, especially the fear of death. They describe a new sense of peace, of purpose, and a real trust in life, even when things get tough.
Okay, so how can you cultivate this perspective without waiting for some huge, life-altering event? The final part of our explainer covers the author's practical toolkit for living in this greater reality, day in and day out.
The source material puts a lot of emphasis on these centering practices. The goal here is pretty simple. Quiet that overactive, analytical brain, what the author calls the drunken monkey, and just be in the present moment. And the list includes all kinds of things, from meditation to gardening to just playing with a pet.
This Rumi quote, which is cited in the text, just gets to the heart of it all. Clarity and connection come from quieting that constant mental chatter. It's in the silence that a deeper understanding has a chance to emerge.
One very specific method that's offered is a technique called holistic breathing. The author describes it as a really powerful tool for releasing stuck emotions. As you can see from the steps, the goal of the continuous deep breathing is to bypass that analytical mind and allow for a natural cathartic release, which helps reconnect you with your core self.
The articles also give some specific advice for highly sensitive or empathic people, those who can often feel really overwhelmed by the world. The core message is all about self-acceptance and learning to trust your intuition while also finding your community and protecting your own energy.
At the end of the day, the author's entire philosophy really boils down to this single powerful belief. It's a total reframing of life, not as a fearful, random ordeal, but as a safe, meaningful, and magnificent adventure in the grand scheme of eternity.
And that leaves us with a final thought to take with you. If you were to truly accept the idea we started with, that your perception is the golf ball, not Mount Everest, what, if anything, would change in how you live your life?